This weekend's project is part of the Unique Antique Vintage Flip Revival Challenge. Here's a pretty cool piece that I got locally online. When I was thinking I wanted to purchase it, it has the like the folksy little heart carvings and I mean a blanket holder, right? But when I was purchasing it, I was thinking it was this little thing because it's really hard to tell online. And truth be told, it's quite large. So I'm going to measure it. It's 37.5 inches wide and about 35.5 inches tall. It's big. So that's interesting. I don't think I've ever seen one this big. And let me give you a closer look. It looks like it's actually made of oak. So I'm not sure how old it is, but let me give you a close-up. Yeah. So you can see that it has some diggers in it, and the wood grain is starting to get a little tired and splitting apart, probably from moisture. I don't know where they had it stored, but here you can really see where some of the splits are. And it's not structural, it's just, you know, it's just minor. So I'm thinking that I am going to, you know, fill it with some wood putties, make sure everything is together, strong. I'll push on some of these little buttons and make sure they're in there. And my thought is I'm going to remove all of the old finish, whatever's on there, and I'm going to do a color wash on it. So, and yeah, so let's do that. It should be hopefully a quick project, but I hate to say that and curse myself. So yeah, let's get started. Let's start it with a good cleaning, and I'm going to do it off camera because you all know that I clean with various things. I clean with Dawn dishwashing soap, I clean with alcohol, I clean with bleach sometimes, I clean with my Zep depending on how dirty it is. Now this doesn't seem to be super dirty. It's just been sitting a while, so. And it's hosted by Krystal at Crafty Creech and DIYs and Andy of Flip Pop. So thank you so much to them for hosting. It's always fun to do these challenges, and it just brings new life to things, and it, you know, you make friends, and not only friends among the people who watch, but the other people who participate. And it's a great world. I love the group in the arts because, I don't know, I think they're nice people and kind people, which is really important.
So I think that I have to take this apart. Not that I want to. I didn't think the finish was on there that tough. It's really not. It's just that I can't get in here, even by hand. It's just too close, and it's lazy. And so, yeah, I'm going to take it apart. I'm going to take it apart, and I'm going to finish sanding all the parts. And then I am going to bleach it because I think it has a little bit of discoloration. So, yeah, let's do that today. Yeah, I can definitely make that work. Okay, I did have them all loosened, and I couldn't show you because I'm using my phone, but I used my phone as a timer. I put the timer on for 2 minutes on each screw, and yes, I was heating the end of my screwdriver as well because that drives a little more heat to the actual screw, and yeah, it just helps a little bit, helps heat up and keep the heat on that screw while you're working. But it really didn't take long at all. I mean, I just went from one to the next, to the next, to the next. There's 8 all in total. So yeah, I'm going to finish taking it apart. Okay, so I did that by hand. I did it with my Dremel. I did it with sandpaper. I think I'm going to take it out and just do a little bit more sandpaper outside just to make sure I have all that finish removed. And then we will put it in a bath and do a little bit of oxalic acid. We'll let that dry overnight, and tomorrow night we'll rinse it off. I mean, tomorrow day we'll rinse it off. And should be ready to paint by the morning. So in other words, I'll do, what will I do? Yeah, I think it'll be ready to paint by the afternoon tomorrow, I hope.
Waiting for oxalic acid to work. So this morning, after the wood is all dry, I'm going to go over it by hand with a 120 grit. I'm sorry, a 180 grit. And what I'm going to do is, because all the water from the oxalic acid soak and the rinsing, it does lift the grain into little fibers that stick up. So, you can feel it if you run your hands over it. It just doesn't feel really, really smooth. And so what we have to do is we have to use sandpaper before we sand these down and prep them for color or stain. You have to go across the grain to nip off any of those fibers that stand up, and then you can go in the opposite direction. And we're going to do all of that by hand, and yeah. Okay, so let's say you didn't do that. It seems like extra work, which it is, but what we want is we want our finish to be really nice. Now, even though it doesn't feel that different because I haven't done any fine sanding on this, what would happen if we didn't take the little fibers off is that when I went over it with an orbital sander, it would just kind of push those fibers down, and then gradually they'd start to stick up again. And you'd have to sand more deeply to get rid of it. So what we do is we start from the outside surface of those little fibers, take off the little fibers, and then you can start doing your regular sanding. That's for, post-water applications of any sort. If the water has been on there for a long time, you would need to do that. And as in the case of oxalic acid, that is what happens. This is oak. It's going to pick up my stains pretty well because of the deep grain anyway. I am going to be conscious of some of the edge grain because that will pick up more. Now, depending on what kind of finish I get when I'm done, and that means the smoother finish you have, the less stain is going to absorb to a certain degree. So with oak, it's not so important. But with other types of wood, like maple or even birch, if you sand that with very, very fine sandpaper, say sometimes even 220, but over 220, that's going to prevent your stain from absorbing. Now, that being said, say you had a spot that it's likely, like a grain edge, that's likely to pick up a lot of stain. What you can do to help decrease that potential is to fine sand over it, like with a 320 or something. It will actually work to prevent, say you had an end grain that was, going to be facing out. These aren't. But if it was, I could fine sand that. I could sand it, then fine sand it over 220, and it will absorb the stain less quickly. All right, let's get going. I'm going to sand with my orbital 120 grit, and yeah, I'll probably do that off camera mostly. after going over them with a Dremel tool to get in the areas, the little places where I can't reach, and doing a little more fine sanding on the cutouts, I wiped them down with mineral spirits, and now I'm going to use a 180 sponge just to go over it a little bit, and then I will wipe them down again. So I'll just do that by hand, just very lightly. You can see the discoloration that's left, but the oxalic acid didn't get rid of it. Okay, so the mineral spirits is still drying, and I think that's just a damp spot of mineral spirits, but still, when you look at the lower edges, especially on the inside for some reason, yeah, where these attached, the bars go and they attach, and there's a really large discoloration here that didn't come out with oxalic acid. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to take them outside and give them a little spray with shellac, and then I will go over it with just a very, very fine sanding sponge. So then I can start my color. Okay, so last night before I left, I sprayed all the pieces with shellac, and of course they dried overnight. And this morning, I'm going to go over them with a very light, fine sanding pad. Now, the reason I used the shellac is, number one, I use shellac a lot. I like it for many different reasons. But in this application, what I want to do is use that shellac as a somewhat of a fill for this deep grain, so that when I put my color wash on, it's less apt to be streaky or uneven. Now, I'm sure, it's not going to be perfect, but I'm going to try my best. So that will help me to do a good job on the exterior color. And yeah, so, and what I can do, say it picks up too much in a spot, I can try, spot sanding that. I don't know exactly how that would work. It would be great if I could actually spray it on. I think that's like a really good thing to do, is spray it on and wipe it off. But these are small. I think I can do this by hand, with a brush or a sponge and a rag to pull it back. So right now I'm going to mix my colors, and it's going to be a green. I want a gray green, so I have a black, a light green and a darker green. So I also have more greens that I can add to it if I want to make that lighter. And yeah, let's see what happens when we mix up some color. Okay, so I actually went and grabbed another green, which is a lot lighter, just so that I can get the color that I want perfectly. I put some plastic down because these jars are kind of old, and I don't want to get them in my tarp. And the black goes in last because black, being so opaque and so rich in depth, I don't want to make it too dark. I just want to gray out my green. I'm thinking more of a sage green. So that's what I'm going to try. Now I have to stir up these paints, so I'll catch up with you in a minute. All right, I'm going to start with my celery. I don't need a lot of paint here because it's a color wash. So I'm going to be very modest about putting paint in. Yeah, I'm going to start like that. I'm going to add a little bit of this moss because it's already grayish green. And let's mix that up and see what that looks like. Oh, I think that, let's see. Just going to put a few dabs of paint in there and see what happens. I kind of watered that down a little. Okay, so I made my paint mixture, and it's a watery version. And I'm going to put some gloves on, and I'm going to apply it with a brush, and then I'm going to wipe it off with a shop towel. Now, before I did that, I actually did a very light sand with this sanding pad, just to give it a nice smooth surface. Don't forget, oil. Oak has that deep grain, so I do want this wood as smooth as possible. I don't want it to pick up that stain more than I prefer. So let's see what happens. Okay. I even have my sprayer right here. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a nice fine mist. I might not need that. That might be overkill, but we'll see. You never know what you're going to get really when you start applying a stain like this. So better safe than sorry. I can always add more if I like. Much harder to take it off, although not impossible. I'm going to try to do all four sides. I think I should put this down here. Round. Love that color though. It's a real sage. So pretty. My shop towel. So I've decided to work horizontally this time because I think number one, I was uncomfortable in the vertical position, and number two, I think I can move more easily to wipe off my product in this position. It's just very hard to wipe vertically. So that's my plan. And yeah, I'm going to do a second coat. Yeah. I'm just going to wet my brush a little bit. Not too much because, yeah. Let's see. use one brush. So what I ended up doing was I had to mix a little bit more paint. So that's some fresh paint. And I am touching up with a sponge. And instead of wiping it back, I'm just simply using the brush. And that seems to be working. And I love how that is coming out. So yeah, and that way I'm not continually wiping it off. So you can see right here, it looks a little pale. And yeah, I'll just give it a little spot touch. I was shocked that I ran out of paint. Yeah, and that's much better. Much better. So I'm just going to work on these edges. Rather than struggle, I have to drill bigger holes in the Okay, had to charge my drill battery up, and then I was drilling these out, and the drill bit broke, of course. Not so much fun. Okay, so I have a problem. Just one? My screws wouldn't go back in, so I drilled out the holes a little bit more on these bars. And mostly it worked okay, except now on the top here, no matter how many bars I switch around, I've switched around all the bars to see if maybe they were just peculiar to each position, but no, it's not that. And so I said, well, let me use new screws, a little bit shorter screws, because the originals are really long. And so I opted for, you know, a little shorter one with a flat head. It goes in there fine, and it has plenty of catch, but it still won't go back together. So I don't know whether there is something buried in this bar, this stretcher bar. Is there already a nail in there? And that's why I can't drill. My drill only goes so far, and then it just stops. It's like it just won't go in any further. I don't know how that could have happened, because they once held screws, so I just don't know, and I didn't break any screws. So I think what I'm going to do is, because this is such a large piece, I think we measured it at like 40 or 43 inches or something. It's really large, and it doesn't need to be that large. I'm going to cut off a good 6 inches and see if I can start with fresh holes. I'll drill them all out, make sure that they're nice and even, and yeah. Hi. This week you watched me participate in the Unique Antique Vintage Revival Challenge. And this is hosted by Krystal of the Crafty Creech and DIYs and Andy of Flip Pop. And I will list both of their links below in the text, and I will I'll post the playlist at the end of my video as well as down below, so you'll find it no matter where you are. Um, this was supposed to be easy. It took me 2 weeks. I had a vintage um, blanket rack or quilt rack, or however you want to say it. It was really wide, and I did it all over. I took it apart, sanded it down, had a really hard time getting it back together. And so I cut it off about 6 inches on one side, and that did help. It's not perfect, that bottom stretcher. It still doesn't grip tightly. I don't know why. I changed all the screws, but anyway, I did a custom color green color wash on this, and then I did a wax finish, clear wax, and then I added white wax around the edges and on the front, just to decorate the heart carvings. And yeah, so you can still see the nice wood grain. It's an oak rack, and so the grain is still visible. I really like the color. I wish it hadn't been so difficult to do. I've done more fun projects, and I think probably I was a little under the weather for a couple of weeks, so I'm still getting back on my feet again. So everything that I do is twice as difficult, it seems. Anyway, if you came this far, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to watch the rest of the playlist, because you've got awesome flippers on there and so much talent to enjoy. Yeah, I want to thank you. If you're not subscribed, would you consider subscribing? And please click the thumbs up and give me a like. It helps my channel grow. Yeah, have a great rest of your weekend, and I wish you all good and beautiful things. I'll throw some pictures on the end.